recent season, they didn't win a single game.
I'm up the creek, flat.
I got lots more talent for you to see, Mr. Tucker.
Our boys have learned how to hit a few people.
If we could only teach them which team to hit. I got a bet for you. I'll refinance you for 1 year. You have to go from 0 to 7 wins, or you'll
miss a bowl game.
I want to hang on to that team, but you're digging my grave. Get that Yugoslavian mule that kicks 100-yard soccer goals. Might be worth a look if it's for real.
You might have come up with a winner.
Ready, Gus?
You asked it around your trudging around my face. It's gone.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
That is not paid for by them. That is paid for by the people of Detroit.
You might be qualified, ML.
I'm not qualified for this job.
Let me tell you something. You want to go right now? Okay? You want to go right now, Al?
Hey kids, it's your old pal ML Elric back for a special holiday edition of ML Soul of Detroit. It's Thanksgiving coming up this week, a time to think about the people you love. And so we bring in a best-selling author to talk about someone loved that resulted in him being chopped into pieces and spread throughout the state of Michigan. So it's heartwarming. It'll warm your heart. And our intro, for those of you who remember Gus, the field goal kicking mule, I wish he was playing for Michigan State. I wanted a mule, instead I got a jackass, which brings us to Shawn Windsor, who's here on time. We appreciate that. He's actually here early. Last time that happened was his honeymoon. And
you're allowed to talk. You're allowed to, this is mainly an audio medium.
I'm just listening to him.
He's just he got a wonderful haircut.
I've had this for a few weeks, but you don't pay attention much. That's all right.
Well, it's because there's only one hair. It got cut and it's growing back, and I see it.
Okay.
But it's good.
Yeah, thank you.
I like that.
Thank you.
That reminds me of there's a headline in the Onion. Do you guys ever look at the Onion, the crazy headlines they have?
Occasionally, yeah.
So, you know how with the turnover in Congress now, the Republicans are talking about we're going to do all these investigations. So the Onion has this headline that says, toddler demands into investigation why that man has no hair. You know how kids are always like, why doesn't, and you're like, shut up, be careful, And when I was a little kid, and I don't remember this, but my mom told us this, we were leaving a Kmart, and my brother, who's a year younger than me and has never been high on the social graces, says to this woman who held the door for us, "Thanks, Chubby." So I'm sure my mom's like,
"Oh, kids are the best, aren't they?"
By the way, as an Anglophile, I just want you to know Laura Potts says hi. She's going to listen. She's listening live. She's taking a walk in Norwich, England, as we speak. She's a fan of the show, and she's listening and wanted you to know. And she says hello.
Sometimes I think Shawn is just doing his own show.
Yeah,
somebody else. I don't know.
Oh, you love that neck of the woods over there.
There's no segue there whatsoever.
You don't need one.
And Laura's family owned a hardware store not too far from Hell, Michigan.
Away we go.
Where my first year at the Free Press, my assignment was we were coming up to the Michigan State game. That was the big game that year, and they wanted me to hype the game every day because they were both undefeated, and I had to come up with a story every single day that somehow would bring some attention to the game. And I ran into Laura's parents' hardware store, and it was
fascinating.
A really cool
Thanks,
place.
Shawn, for bringing that up.
Kind of place where they gave you a bushel of apples, but that's neither here nor there. We are here because of the generous support of our sponsors, Luke Nowacki of Pinnacle Wealth Strategies and David Hall Financial of Hall Financial. So they'll tell you a little bit about how they can save you a lot of money and help you prepare for retirement after we talk to Lowell Cauffiel, former Detroit News reporter. If you remember seeing his byline in the Detroit News, it's been a while because he transitioned from being a reporter to being a best-selling author, and I believe it was his first book. But it's one of the greatest true crime books I've ever read. Before true crime became this big genre, it's called Masquerade, about a Grosse Pointe psychology professor who became obsessed with a caste corridor. I'm going to say a woman of, she did not get a W-9. Let's put it that way. She did not declare her earnings to the IRS.
Contract employee?
Yeah, I would say that she was an independent contractor who had some interesting associates, and Well, it just didn't work out that well for the doctor. So Lowell's going to tell us a little bit about that, as well as some of the other great stuff he's been up to. And we're going to try and see how many parallels there are between the story that Lowell tells in Masquerade and this heinous murder of the WWJ overnight anchor, because when I read that case, the first thing I thought was Masquerade. So we're going right to the guy who's the expert on this. Lowell, thanks for dialing in from L.A., where I understand the weather's always nice and Elton John has played his last concert.
That's true. And, it's always great to reconnect with Detroit. You mentioned Hell, Michigan. My last house, when I was living in Michigan 22 years ago, was only a couple of miles from Hell. And because I was in Gregory, Michigan, and I used to say I was a true crime writer from Hell.
Well, that's where the hardware store was, in Gregory or Unadilla, one of those two. So
Unadilla is where the family farm is.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, now I'm glad you brought it up, Shawn.
Actually, I was in Dexter Town.
Yeah, no, we don't want to be interesting or spontaneous here at all. Let's just keep to the script. Come on, Marc.
When are you going to be interesting?
Yeah. And actually, Alan Canny, who was the victim in this, he was not only he did some lecturing, but he was mainly a therapist and had a lot of high-end clientele. He had actually office in the Fisher Building, and the Fisher Building overlooked 3rd down the Cass Corridor, and that's where he met Dawn Spence when she was working the streets, and that began his obsession, which lasted, I think it was about a year and a half. He spent about $250,000 on her, and her boyfriend and pimp, John Lucky Fry. John Lucky Fry, what a great character. These are all true life characters. They got into a dispute with Alan Canny and killed him with a baseball bat and then dismembered him.
Yeah, he went to pieces over the breakup, you could say.
Oh, yeah.
The interesting thing about the story was this Jekyll and Hyde existence that Canny had. He in the Cass Corridor, he renamed himself Dr. Al Miller. And Dr. Al Miller was an MD. Of course, he wasn't an MD, and his name wasn't Dr. Al Miller, but he created this second identity for himself to try to hide his identity as the Alan Canny, psychotherapist in the Fisher Building with a great house in Grosse Pointe and a beautiful young wife, Jan Canny. She had no idea what was going on. I mean, he showed up missing one night during a horrible thunderstorm, and the next thing she know, well, we think your husband is involved with these dope fiends down in the Cass Corridor in the Southwest Side. We're finding parts of his body, and would you come in and identify him? And I mean, it was just such a traumatic situation for her. And in the book, she's in the book Masquerade. She's a really key part of the book. We got to her, and she told me her whole story. And anyway, yeah, it was my first book. That was my first book.
So he spent $250,000. How much would that be in today's money?
At least $250,000.
At least $500,000, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, and Lowell, so just to give people a little better feel for who the cast of characters was, this guy's very prominent. He's a lecturer. He's published a book that people seem to think is a big deal. He becomes obsessed with this. She was a junkie, right? Who came from Harper Woods or St. Clair Shores, some sort of suburb.
She was actually an honor student at Harper Woods.
Right.
She, but dropped out of high school with only like a couple of weeks to go, and dropped out of high school and ended up down in the corridor with her high school boyfriend. She had a drug, an alcohol problem, and then she ended up, shooting heroin. And so there's only, you're living in the Cass Corridor, and if you're a woman, you're not going to make money as in any kind of executive position to feed your habits. So she started working the streets as a hooker.
Yeah, and for folks who are a little younger, the Midtown used to be known as the Cass Corridor. Yeah. You could not buy a $450 Fossil watch there. Nope. You could not get small plates there, or a cupcake that's filled with truffle sauce. And
I think we got it.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm boring Shawn already. Maybe Carlos is a little more engaging, but at this time, for this guy to be hanging out on the Cass corridor with a high school dropout junkie, they didn't meet at Starbucks. How did he run across her?
Well, it was really funny. I came back to Detroit to visit family and re-traumatize myself by going to a couple of Lions games. And my family says, we're going to tour you. And he took me through the corridor, and I couldn't believe the transformation of the Cass corridor, because it was nothing but, when I did this book, and for many years, it was junkies. There's a kind of a great scene in the book where people are, all the dope fiends and the hookers and the ne'er-do-wells were all on the miscreants were all on the street. And if the police car came down third, like cockroaches, they would disappear back into the buildings. And then when the police car passed, they would come back out. So yeah, the Cass corridor is between Wayne State University, where I went to school, by the way, and downtown is dramatically different. Dramatically different than what it was back then. And
the cops were great characters in the book as well. But Dr. Canty did not have sex with Dawn Spence, right? He did in the beginning. But he became obsessed with her, and he had this whole thing that he was going to help her. He was going to help her get out of the corridor, and told her she was college material, and all this other stuff. But yet he made sure that she was well supplied in drugs, because in some ways he's the real villain of the story. And the fact that he has this need to completely control her and keep her high, so she is dependent on him. And that was the nature. What fascinated me about this book was and when I wrote the book, it was in the early 80s, we were near the end of what was called the Me Decade. And the Me Decade was psychology had emerged as like kind of the new religion. It was a way for people to find happiness and contentment and gratitude in their life. And here you had a guy who was actually a very good therapist who could heal himself. That's what really fascinated me about it. And that's what got me into the book. Like, why couldn't this guy apply these same psychological principles to himself? Instead, he ends up obsessed with this Cass corridor hooker and keeping her dependent on him. I mean, he violated everything that he was doing with his patients and, helping out their lives. And he couldn't do it with himself. And ultimately, I think that was what was his thing, was that need for control. Today, we would call it codependency. He was very codependent on her. In other words, he would be the rescuer and rescue her, but that put him in a position of control. And I'll just add this one thing. There's three phases to codependency. And the first one is rescuer, the second one is prosecutor, and the third one is victim. And he went through all those, because first he was trying to rescue her, and then she wasn't following like his ideas and wasn't moving out, getting away from Lucky, the pimp, and all that. And so he became very critical of her. And then in the end, he was kind of like the victim, like, I tried to help you and you haven't done, and he ultimately became an actual victim, dismembered victim. Well, it was like reverse psychology, because she was the one who told him when the hour was up and asked him to give her some money.
That's exactly right.
Now she and her now, did she ditch the high school boyfriend for the biker at some point?
Yeah, for Lucky. Yeah. Well, what happened, his name was Donnie Carlton. We called him Dumb Donnie Carlton. And he used to beat her.
Probably not to his face, but.
Yeah, well, he was a punk. And he used to slap her around. And he was giving her shit on the street. And Lucky saw it through his window at the Homewood Manor and came down and set Lucky straight. And now she had a new guy to take care of her. And he actually treated Dawn pretty well. He never beat Dawn, unlike his previous girlfriend.
Now, it seems to me that Dr. Canty was a pretty good cash cow for this cracked out couple. Why did they decide to kill him?
It's sort of a complex thing, but here's what happened: is that there was two parallel things happening. First of all, they had switched from heroin to cocaine, which means that they were like doing a lot of coke and they were highly wired. Oof. And Lucky came up with this idea that if the doc would give him $25,000, he would disappear and go to California and he could have Dawn to himself. And so that was the plan. And at the same time, the doctor is in therapy himself, finally with his original psychiatrist, and he's deciding, I've got to end this thing. And so it all came to a climax when Lucky wanted the $25,000, but Al wasn't going to give it to him, and instead he shot up Dawn with some drugs. And Lucky, who was trying to get them clean at the time, saw him shooting her up and providing her with drugs. They got into an argument, and Al made the mistake of pushing him, and he pushed him, and Lucky tripped over something that was behind him. And you didn't lay hands on Lucky Fry. He went completely berserk. I document that in the book. If somebody laid hands on him, he picked up a baseball bat and did some batting practice on Al's head. And I don't even think he intended on killing him. And down went Al, and then what are we going to do? What are we going to do with the body here? How am I going to get out of this situation? And he came up with the idea to dismember him.
Lowell, I got to believe there were multiple attempts to make The Masquerade into a movie or a TV series, especially now that you're Mr. Hollywood. How far did that get, or am I not remembering that there was one made?
It was optioned 5 or 6 times, okay? One thing I've learned about being in Hollywood, getting a movie made is one of the most difficult things in existence. It was optioned 5 or 6 times. Tony Randall optioned it, ABC optioned it, and various things would happen, like the executives would change, and because and things get made. So finally, I got an offer. This is what brought me out here, from a director who said, why don't you adapt the film and write the script? And I had studied some screenwriting, but so I did. I adapted it. I came out here to adapt it. I ended up moving out here. And we had Mike Medavoy. He was going to shoot it. That script actually has got me a ton of work. I've sold 6 pilots to major networks, all as a result of that script that became my sample. But it's yet to be made. But we haven't given up yet.
Okay.
So...
Well, there seems to be a
story.
There seems to be, true crime is just so huge, and there seems to be a nostalgia now for the 80s, especially Detroit. So, and I feel like now would be the right time. Plus, there was a movie star in the book, the homicide detective Gil Hill, right? Gil Hill,
right.
Wasn't he?
Right.
Was he the main detective?
He was the inspector. He was the head of the homicide division at the time, and he was head of the homicide division. Yeah, my representatives are actually putting together a true crime package, and we're going to be going out with the pitch and everything at the beginning of the year.
Now, I don't want to cast any aspersions on the recently departed here in Metro Detroit with the WWJ anchor who died, but when I saw that story that it's an older guy living with a younger woman who has a friend who comes over at an odd time and apparently loses his shit and ends up trying to kill everybody, I immediately started thinking about Dr. Canty and this double life and the things that he did. And this case is still being investigated, so we're going to let justice run its course there. But Lowell, when you look at that case with Canty and you look at what was going on in Detroit, did you say, wait a minute, I've seen this story before. I've written this story. I've written the screenplay. Do you see some parallels there? Or am I getting ahead of myself?
No, I think there are some parallels. Obsession is a strange thing. And things can take place on a couple of different levels. There's sexual obsession. I did a lot of research into this, and it's interesting that when you're in a sexual relationship with somebody, at least in the first couple of years, it actually floods your brain with the dopamine in the same spot that cocaine does. So that you're really kind of in an addictive state at that point. So that's one level of obsession can take place, which can lead to homicide, because you're cutting off somebody's drug. The other one, though, is more like the canny situation where you're psychologically dependent on somebody. And you just can't imagine life, without that person. This anchor, I didn't know him. I never really listened to him or anything, but it seems like he wasn't exactly a guy that was like pulling in a lot of girls. And I had this, relationship with a younger woman. Apparently, she had kids with him as well. But interestingly, he never married her. And like where this other guy fits in, I would want to know what his relationship was with the woman. But obviously, he saw the older guy as some kind of threat. But who knows what happened, what kind of confrontation took place. I saw that the one guy realized he really fucked up when he killed the guy and then tried to get out by committing suicide. But apparently he didn't get some good fentanyl and was ODing on the floor, and it hadn't taken him out. And now apparently, I'm sure he's charged with either minimally second-degree murder.
So we got the one guy in the world who takes fentanyl and doesn't die. What an asshole!
All right, completely.
I mean, come on, dude. So, and do you see a lot of cases, or have you done a lot of research into these obsessive relationships where the ex-boyfriend or someone who has some idea of him and a former partner will then revisit their new situation and somehow wreak havoc or take vengeance or just try and, they just freak out and then it turns into a bloodbath?
Well, yeah, and this is where it gets into the, my ex-wife, who I still have a great relationship with, worked in the Ann Arbor Police Department.
So you're basically telling her new boyfriend not to worry about Lowell Cauffiel, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
She was in a domestic violence unit, and she used to tell me all these stories, and of people going off, and it's all about control. I mean, that's what it gets down to. Is that there's a member of the party that needs to have control. It's a pathological need for control, and if that gets upset, crazy things happen, and people get violent, and
that's why I stay quiet with my.
Yeah, right. That's why you just want to just say yes, dear.
No, it's your show. Yeah.
Talking to you before we started, Lowell, I was asking about House of Secrets, and it really took a toll on you mentally just writing that book. It's a fantastic book. It's one of the most messed up stories I've ever read about a father who kind of ran his family like a cult.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of sex and incest. It's messed up.
Yeah.
Are you past that now? I mean, do you like true crime, or does it just wear on you, or do you still find it interesting? I mean, how do you approach the subject now?
Well, I went into clinical depression with House of Secrets, eventually came out of it, wrote the book, but I decided that's it. That, I'm not going to write any more true crime books. And also the money went out of true crime. Editors and publishers got this idea that, all my books were hardcover, which means they had to be about real high quality and independently researched. And they decided, well, this is, let's just do paperbacks and let the story carry it. We don't care about the writers. And so I wanted to move on. But one of the reasons I came out here to LA and went to work in Hollywood, I wanted to make the endings end in the way I wanted them to. Instead of, I mean, you got to understand.
Happy endings.
When you're doing these kind of books, one day you're in a small little room with somebody like Lucky Fry or some murderer, some psychopath, and you're playing him so you can get information out of him, and you're pretending to be his friend. And you actually do kind of become his friend. And then the next day, you're with the families, and they're crying, and you're hugging them, and their lives have been destroyed. And you begin to think, like, who the fuck am I? Am I the psychopath? I could be this way with the killer, and I could be this way with the families. It's just really good reporting technique, but it wears on you after a while. So now I do, like I said, I sold 5 or 6 pilots, 6 pilots in major networks. They haven't gotten made, but I've made a really good living. Only about 3% of pilots that are purchased get made. So I don't take that personally. But I will do. I'm going to be taking out a limited series, pitching a limited series on Henry Lee Lucas, if you remember who he.
Oh yeah, Texas, right?
And I went down there, and I was one of the first people that identified, along with Hugh Ainsworth, that identified him as a phony. That he hadn't killed all these 350 people that he claimed he did. But I just finished a novel. Let's see, my third novel, fourth novel. It's my 10th book. It's called Below the Line, and that's about a Detroit homicide cop who, at the end of his career, decides to come out to Hollywood and become a consultant on a TV show. And there's a lot of them out here, a lot of consultants. They're former ex-cops. And has a really good couple of years, and then it goes to hell, and he's not making any money, and a producer comes up to him and wants him to find somebody, and it takes you into the whole underbelly of LA and of Hollywood. And it's written in the style. I write my novels in the style of kind of like Elmore Leonard. There's a lot of humor involved and a lot of really crazy, weird people. And there's no shortage of crazy, weird people here in the entertainment business. It's really a whole dysfunctional universe. It was a lot of fun to write about.
Is that a little lighter on your heart when you're doing fiction that way, as opposed to digging into it? And by the way, when you were a reporter at the Detroit News, did you ever feel that? I don't know how much police work you covered in a role as a journalist, but I know it's pretty common in newsrooms. Mike and I have a pretty good friend who covered the cops for a while, and it ate at him. You can only do that. Most people can only do that for so long.
Yeah, I mean, I never worked on the police beat. I would poach stories. I would see a good crime story, and then I would go into it and dig into it. And in the end, I was writing for the magazine, for the Sunday magazine before they killed it, and would do an in-depth look at it. I always found that kind of my style was to kind of knock down the things that the daily reporters had done. Because, when you're doing daily reporting, it's really pretty inaccurate. I mean, you got 5 or 6 hours to put a story together and hit it on deadline. And people would go with certain themes, and I would come in and write a piece that kind of showed that, there's much more to the story than what you do. And I kind of made my career doing that at the Detroit News. Well, and then later at Detroit Monthly magazine, too.
One of the things I loved about Masquerade is exactly that, is you revisited what happened. Everybody knew from the Daily News that Dr. Canty was killed and that he was dismembered, and I think most of him was found. There may be still a few parts out there, so if you find a black bag somewhere in northern Michigan, you may want to not open it. But when you went back, you started to uncover so much more of the story about how this book that Dr. Canty was known for, that there were just like boxes of them in his office, right? I mean, they weren't, this wasn't well distributed. This wasn't an industry tome. It was like a vanity book, but he put it out there, and that a lot of his, he's lectured to these people and those people that really he hadn't. A lot of who he was, a lot of his prestige and his reputation before he met Dawn Spence was also a masquerade, that this was someone who had created this persona, and that he, to my way of thinking, was demonstrating that there was some instability there long before Ms. Spence decided to spend senior skip day putting some shitty H in her veins right down the street from where the Oakland County child killer was snatching kids.
Yeah, well, he wanted to be a theater major when he went to college, so I think he continued that ambition, into his regular life. The interesting thing about Dawn, there's a real relationship between Dawn and his wife, Jan Canty. She came to work for him. She was only like 19 or 20 years old and started out as his typist, and he was telling her, well, you're going to be college material and all this. And she ended up going to university and then becoming a psychotherapist herself and all that. And once she became independent and once she became older, I think he lost interest in her. So he needed a new project, and that new project was Dawn Spence. So there's a definite, you can see the pathology between his first wife and then it transferring in a more twisted psychodrama Twilight Zone of his own making in the cast corridor with Dawn. And by the way, Dawn, I actually helped Dawn get into recovery. I've been sober myself. I've been coming up on 38 years, clean and sober. And at the time when I was doing this book, I was only sober like a year and a half. And when Dawn was sentenced, she was sentenced to go into the rehab. No rehab would take her. Nobody would take her because she was this, involved in this murder.
Yeah, accessory to murder looks bad on your application.
Yeah, exactly. So I called up Jim Ballmer, who was the head of Dawn Farm. And I said, Jim, I got this gal, and she needs some help and all that. And they came down and got her and took her. And she's from what I understand, she's clean and sober today. I saw her actually speak at a recovery meeting. This was about 20 years ago. But she ended up with a magna cum laude from University of Michigan and a finance executive in a Fortune 500 company.
So Dr. Canty was right. She was college material.
She was college material. Yeah, but she needed to get clean and sober, and that's one of the positives of but that's not in the book. And then you just see her leaving with the recovery people. But I was instrumental in getting that, and that was a bit of a decision on my part because now I'm getting involved in the story. But when nobody would take her, I just decided somebody's got to get this gal some help and see what happens.
Lowell, do you know what happened to Dr. Canty's wife? Do you know where she is or how she?
Yeah, she's a successful psychotherapist. She remarried. She just actually, she's got a memoir that has come out. I think it's the 26th that both of us are going to be in a show on Discovery ID called, you might want to tune into that. And the name of the true crime series is Who the Bleep Did I Marry? Perfect title for her on that. That's on the 26th, I believe, that's going to appear. And she's finally come out publicly, and she wrote this memoir, and I think she wrote the memoir to help her put this, behind her or deal with it.
Yeah, I read a story, I think it was in the Detroit News, that said a few years ago she was going to start on this because she felt like her life had been limited because she really didn't want to discuss it, and it was something that she felt maybe this was part of some sort of cathartic process to finally face it and just say, hey, I'm not responsible for any of it. And certainly she wasn't. One thing I've always wanted to ask you is when I read the book, at the end of it, there's a section or a passage where you talk about, what a intelligent, emotionally rich person she is. It's very laudatory. And I always kind of thought, I think old Lowell might have a crush on Mrs. Canty. Anyone, how deep did the research go there?
No, there was no crush.
So she just really struck you.
Well, I thought that she was like one of the heroic people of the book, and the fact that she survived it. There's a great scene in the book where she's up there talking to Gilbert Hill, and has found out that I think she had just identified the body. There was no body to identify. She identified a head and a couple of hands that they had on a table, and is that of being Al. And the news media had been very helpful with her, trying to find Al. But now he was a murder victim, and she comes out of the coroner's office or whatever, and she sees all these tripods across the street, and she goes, "What are those?" And she realized that it was the media, and instead of being helpful, she saw them the media as like machine guns. And just imagine this kind of trauma of going from, even just with the press, they're very helpful, and now suddenly they've got all these questions, and I'm humiliated, and why didn't I know? Why couldn't I see? All those different questions. What is it about me that allowed this to happen so I didn't see what was really going on?
That reminds me of Jim Harbaugh and his comment about worms having machine guns and how birds would not eat them if they had machine guns.
Okay.
Well, it's the game. It's the big game, you know. So.
Yeah, I guess Jim Harbaugh recently having a loved one dismembered would be the connection there.
Well, you know, talking about dismemberment on Thanksgiving week, too, is a nice connection. So.
Well, you dismember the turkey. Stuart, who's watching us on Facebook, says that Ms. Canty's book is called "A Life Divided." That's the memoir. So if you haven't got enough of this story from Masquerade, if you want to read, I guess the epilogue, if you will, you can check out Canty's book, "A Life Divided." Lowell,
Masquerade is available on Apple Book or Kindle. And then there's also some hardcovers and paperbacks still floating around, but it's had its run pretty much. It's now an electronic version.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book. Lowell, where can people go to find more of your work and find out what you're up to next? Because it sounds like you still got your hand in a lot of pots. Yeah.
Well, Amazon and Amazon's a great source for that, and Apple Books. A lot of people are reading that way, but there's still, hardcover and paperback copies. You just Google my name or just search my name in Amazon. I do have a book coming out early next summer, and that's my novel. That's called Below the Line. So that's going to be coming out, and I'm pretty excited about that. The book business has become kind of a strange place. It's not the way it used to be. There's only like 4 publishers now, and so the competition is a little different. The money isn't as good, but I've had a great run, and I still going to keep writing, and it becomes a habit at some point.
Well, writers tell stories, right? It's what you do. So, Lowell, we really appreciate your time. Masquerade's a great book. Look for him on Discovery ID. Who the blank did I marry? A question I'm sure we've all asked ourselves on many occasions.
I asked it twice.
Yeah, that's
twice.
Sometimes the answer
Second one gets easier, though. Second divorce gets easier.
Oh, really? I wonder if my wife is listening. But I know she has some sharp knives, so I hope she's not. And I think she knows a guy named Lucky. Whatever happened to Lucky, by the way? Is he free? It's been long enough that I guess he could have got out, or did he?
He had that. He was convicted of natural life, and he died in prison from hepatitis C.
Hepatitis. Didn't see that coming from the junkie life.
Yeah,
right.
Wow. Okay. Well,
he used to call the house all the time. My kids would talk to him on the phone. They called him Uncle Lucky.
Huh.
Wow. My kids met Eminem's uncle one time, but there was no heroin or savagery involved. But
well, you figure why my son's in film schools wanting to be a horror director. With a upbringing like that. And of course, my daughter, successful actress. One of the stars of Legally Blonde and Road Trip and Drew Carey Show, and all that. So it's become an entire entertainment family.
Okay. And you said there was Dumb David or Dumb Donald somewhere. I may be getting him confused with the Cosby kids.
Donnie Carlton.
Yeah. What happened to Dumb Donnie?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I'm sure he dumbed out somewhere.
Okay. But he found his way through the criminal justice system at some point, I presume.
Yeah. And Marc Bando, who was one of what they call the horror cops in the Cass Corridor, a very colorful character. They used to swoop down on Johns and whores with music playing on the loudspeaker of the police car, like "Watch out, she's a man-eater" by Hall & Oates. Or else they would use the Ride of the Valkyries.
Oh, sure.
He's still around. He's actually a successful World War II author.
Okay. Well, Lowell, you've got a lot of friends back here in Detroit who we're looking forward to your appearance on the show. We appreciate you. You're welcome to come back when this new book's ready. Let us know. We'd love to tell people a little bit more about us. If you want to know who's coming up next on the show or what Lowell's up to, you can follow us on Facebook at ML Elric. Twitter is at Elric. And, of course, we appreciate if you can subscribe to the show on YouTube channel, ML Elric. You'll get alerts there for whenever we go live. And if you're listening to us now and you want to see Lowell talk about this story, This show will be available. The replay's on YouTube, so please give it a watch. And if you like it, we'd appreciate a thumbs up. So, Lowell Cauffiel, best-selling author, keeping an eye on Detroit. He says that he's free and clear, but he's going to Lions games, so it sounds like maybe he still has some very, very dangerous addictions there. But I guess
I'm coming back for the Vikings game. I'm coming back flying back to just see the Vikings game.
You know what, Lowell? You're college material. That's how it starts. You're college material, my friend. So thanks, Lowell.
Take care.
And here's where we need to tell you, this is information that could, if not save your life, at least save you some money.
Yeah, we'll start with Hall Financial, right?
Of course, David Hall, the left-handed golfer.
And right-handed.
Always hits it straight.
Scratch both sides, right? Over 40% of Americans, they don't have $500 in an emergency fund. A lot of people don't realize that they can use the equity that they have in their house to put themselves in a better financial situation. We're talking about a cash-out refinance from Hall Financial. It can help you relieve financial stress and keep you and your family prepared for the future. So if you want to see what Hall can do, and rates have dropped, by the way. Mortgage rates have dropped really fast.
I know, and I think
2 weeks.
I think the Fed is getting ready to jack them up again. So call Hall now. Don't wait. They moved this paperwork really fast.
866-CALL-HALL, or you can go on our website, mlsolodetroit.com, and click the little link to go to their website to get a little review, right?
That's right. When you call Hall, let them know that ML sent you. Ask for Dan Morrison. Dan moves so fast through this process, this paperwork, that I was the one slowing him down. He's like, we're ready. I'm like, Dan, come on, man.
That's what I experienced, too.
It's just like, I'm like, I know you guys can do it in like 5-10 days, whatever the hell it is. Like, I need the time. But if you're ready to go, they're ready too.
And if you're making one of those big financial decisions, you also want to know how it's going to affect your current and future financial goals. That's why we suggest Luke Nowacki. He's got a whole team at Pinnacle Wealth Strategies. They can help you plan for all your financial goals, both today and into the future. Give Luke a ring, 248-663-4748. Complimentary consultation. See how your plans, what you want to do with your money in the future, and Luke can start guiding you in the right way.
And the thing about Luke is when you call Luke, maybe you're feeling lonely, maybe you're feeling like nobody cares. Give him a call and you'll find out that he'll make it all about you, sweetheart.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Royal Alliance Associates, Inc., member FINRA-SIPC. Royal Alliance Associates, Inc. is separately owned, and other entities and or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Royal Alliance Associates, Inc.
Oh, man, the geeks have inherited the earth.
Did I do that?
What a dork.
Does him wanting to play with us again mean that he's turning into a geek, or we're turning into cool guys?
So last week we kind of went in depth in a little feature I'd like to try out on a semi-regular basis on this show, Ask the Soul. But I think there's an opportunity here to try and figure out who some geeks are. And so I want to, with Shawn here and Marc, I want to ask them, as I have in the past, who they think the geek is in this situation. And so let me just start with
I'm here?
with a little narrative. You're here.
Okay.
You're here in the flesh. In the flesh.
Barely.
My 39-year-old brother-in-law still lives with his parents, taking pocket money from them and allowing them to pay for everything for him, including business class flights. He has never not lived with them. Even when he was studying abroad at university, he lived in the family apartment that his parents paid for. He is a nice and easygoing person, has a good job, but doesn't appear to have any friends and has never had a serious girlfriend. I want to be compassionate towards him, and I want him to have a better and fuller life for his own sake. I've spent over 10 years discussing with him, and separately with his mother, how he plans to move out and live his own life, even helping him look at apartments, but it never actually happens. He has few life skills and can't seem to do anything for himself when his mother is not there. My husband and I feel frustrated and sad that my brother-in-law is letting his life pass him by, especially since he is nearly 40 and says he wants to get married and have kids. We also feel frustrated at the codependence of him and his mother, and that the money spent on him could be used for his parents' retirement. What can we do?
So this is so it's her husband's brother, right? He doesn't seem too concerned about it, the husband.
Yeah, so this is the woman's brother-in-law, And the husband didn't write the letter, so although maybe he's just written him off, I don't know. But I mean, there's a lot of geeks here. Is it the 39-year-old guy? Is it the mom who's allowing this guy to still breastfeed on the verge of his 40th?
Mom's always a mom.
I thought we were offering advice and solutions here.
Okay, what's your solution?
Not necessarily pointing out geeks.
What's your advice and solution?
We can follow our muse.
To each their own.
Is he happy?
After that, that's all you got?
I mean, we're the only species on the planet that would ever think this was somehow wrong. I mean, right?
No, birds will push you out of a nest at some point.
Yeah, but then you live with them the rest of your life.
What about bonobos?
What about elephants? Come on, what about penguins?
What are you talking?
I'm just saying.
Again.
The idea, this is a fairly modern idea, right? Let's be real. I mean, we stayed together all our lives for most of human history, so it's a fairly modern thing. What we're talking about, if it's in our DNA, is what I'm saying. It's in our genes. So if we want to do that. If a mom and a son want to hang out, whatever, he's working, that's fine.
Yeah, but
I know it's not ideal. It's not what you want. It's not what you want for your own life.
No, this Shemp isn't just living at home. He's hitting mom up for business class flights.
Well, maybe
and for cash, he's got a good job.
Maybe it makes her feel
good. He says he wants a girlfriend, and all he's doing is he's hanging on mommy's apron strings.
Yeah.
This is not the 1700s where we're all living on the farm and somebody does the butter churning and somebody does the mending.
We've done that for 10,000 years. So what I'm saying
I never churned butter in my life, let alone for 10,000 years. Where do you come up with this backstory? You made that up.
No. What are you talking? It's just reality. It's who we are.
Shawn got me upset.
Good God.
How come everyone's not living at home then?
Because we're trying to change our society, I guess. Well, I don't know. Why do we get married?
So in the 1700s, it was acceptable to take a business class flight.
The idea of romantic love didn't even exist until Shakespeare.
$10 that your mom gave you.
What's going on with you today?
It's outrageous.
I mean, you know what I mean?
Outrageous. I can't countenance this.
I don't know. We got married for property up until a few hundred years ago. What the fuck are you talking about?
I don't know if that advice is going to help this
I'm not
email.
saying it's advice. I'm just saying it's not completely unnatural. That's all I'm saying.
Dumb Donald or whatever his name was.
You know what else is not unnatural, but people think it is the McRib.
That was last week. And by the way, if you left the McRib out, it would still be good.
I said that for Marc.
Because there are so many preservatives in it, it never goes bad.
You know, look, I get it. You guys are thinking he's Matthew McConaughey. It's failure to launch, and the parents are, maybe secretly plotting, but apparently they're not in this case. So,
So you see no geek in this situation?
No, I want to know what the mom really
Nice
thinks.
advice.
That's the thing. What does the mom really think? If she's okay with
here.
it, if she's okay with it,
she's making some blueberry buckle for her her 39-year-old son.
Putting pennies aside so he can get free gin and tonics on airplanes. I get it.
Yeah, she's cutting up his meat right now, so she can't get back to you. But you want to, try your imagination.
I think that's Kathy Bates in a different movie.
I don't watch that many movies, but
Wow. That's Misery, not Failure to Launch. Anyway, Marc, why are you so upset about it?
I'm not upset about anything. I'm waiting to hear your advice.
My advice is to let it be. Here's the thing. Find out if the mom's
that's what the
truly
Beatles
okay.
said just before they broke up.
Can you figure out if the mom is truly okay?
How'd that work out?
That's the thing. If she's fine, then let it be.
I want to know if he has access to her finances.
It sounds like he just has to ask. It sounds like
no, I know, but you never
who's controlling him.
Yeah,
if she's
I don't know how old he is either. Well, he's 40, so they're probably I don't know how old they are. They have time, but yeah, that's the only thing I would worry about. But you can only help somebody who doesn't want to be helped.
What's the cutoff? Assuming somebody can work and there are no disabilities involved, what's the cutoff for you?
For what
age to get out?
To get out?
Yeah, of your parents' house.
Well, I mean, wasn't that always the goal? Was to
no, but what's the cutoff? Because it's much older these days than it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
The kids definitely aren't getting their driver's licenses soon.
That's true.
There's more dependency now than ever. But 30.
They're not in love with the car like you are. They don't care about Rivieras.
I don't want my girls living at home that long.
What? 18, 21,
18? No,
25?
I want them to go to college. I don't know. Once they leave the nest, I kind of want them to go out.
But
go out and live their life.
You're slimming this down. This is not just about staying at home. It's not about being tight with your. They're paying for shit. He has a job. Business class. I get hung up on business class. Fly coach, you dirtbag. What the hell? I mean, who has the nerve to say, I'm thinking of going on a vacation. I need some money. And by the way, I really don't want to fly in the back of the plane.
This dude has a job, though. I mean, so he doesn't want to leave.
That's what's interesting.
A good job.
He's got a job.
He doesn't want to leave.
Let's get back to business class. What does that mean exactly? Because there's no business class domestically, right? It's overseas.
You're asking the wrong guy. I'm
so are we really
talking Spirit?
So if it's first class domestically, okay, fine. But if it's business class overseas, yeah, that's thousands and thousands of dollars.
It's significantly more even domestically to fly anything other than coach.
Yeah, there's no business class domestically. But
yeah, this turd's in the Admiral's Club waiting for his flight, and somebody's.
That's not all it cracked up to be anymore either, right? You sign a.
You're asking
credit,
the wrong guy.
You get a credit card, and you're in a Delta
Can't even
club.
get in the Rear Admiral's Club.
You know what I mean? Yeah, that's all that is.
All right, so Shawn.
Shawn.
Okay,
People are hanging out in t-shirts
really
and
got
shorts.
Shawn's blood flowing there.
It's not the thing. Yeah, you've got some idea about that. Business class somehow means he's eating caviar, which I'm sure you would say.
Why aren't they
caviar.
wearing suits like we did for tens of thousands of years?
Well, for
ridiculous.
For 100 years, I guess.
Well, we moved out of the home for 100 years,
and we moved on from suits.
Shawn still.
We're all in hoodies. You're not. You're in a
all over the place today.
Some kind of a nylon poly blend black thing there, but Mike and I are in hoodies.
So I'm looking for help finding.
Are you trying to win by exhaustion?
This is
no, I'm just so tired of the narrow view.
What narrow view?
We need to take the long view.
No, we're talking about one specific example.
Exactly, and if all 8 billion of us on this planet were doing it, then maybe that'd be different. But we're not.
This money could be spent on his parents. When these parents retire, Mr. Business Class is not going to have any money to take care of them. Back in the Flintstones era that you're talking to, Bam Bam and Pebbles took care of Fred, Wilma, Barney, and Betty.
I agree. That's how it should be.
Some weird thruple thing going on back then, but it was a Stone Age. You had to stay warm.
I
Those
agree.
tunics
That's
fell
how it
off
should be.
all the time.
No, you should take care of your parents, right? That's how most societies
This guy's being taken care of by his parents.
We're like, out, go, go, never come back.
ML, think of all the money this guy's saving, though, so he can take care of them when they're older.
If he's turning over Luke Nowacki, he doesn't have to worry about taking care of his parents.
Well, we used to do that until we invented nursing homes.
That he can take care of everybody. But it's okay. So Shawn's out. He's not going to.
No. So my geeks are you two mothers.
What do I do?
Scratchers.
You say that every week.
No, I haven't said that in months.
Mark, do you see?
Okay,
do you
Mike,
see a geek
exaggerator.
in here? Or just everybody gets a hug.
It's not what I would do. So I would have moved out a long time ago if I was that guy. I mean, for the woman that wrote it, I mean, if the parents are happy and he's happy, I just keep an eye on those finances.
Oh, wow.
I know
some that.
Huh?
Oh, wow.
What? I'm all for people being content.
After all that, that's your answer. Oh, thank you.
I had to get through all your raging about 10,000 years ago and how things were done.
Raging.
Yeah. So Mike,
I know somebody whose siblings stole from their parents, so it's kind of always like
I
head where
be skeptical. That's good.
Are you being facetious when you say that?
No, I know skeptical is good. Cynical is not, but skeptical.
Exactly.
But skeptical
always be
is
skeptical,
good.
not cynical.
So Mark,
I think she should stop wasting her energy trying to help this guy.
Exactly.
Out.
So is I'm trying to
is
say.
your geek the kid or the parents or the letter writer?
It's still a kid. I mean, come on, move out.
It's okay.
Kid, he's 40.
Okay, so there's a good argument for the kid, but I'm going to say it's a sister-in-law. Just put an ice pick in the back of this guy's neck and call it a day.
Like 10,000 years ago.
In the Ice Age.
There's an all-night party in room 7609.
What was that, Shawn?
It's just funny coming into this segment. Yeah, we're not going to listen to anything modern. You guys are saying we're living in the past and we're coming into this segment.
God, you hate this show.
I love this show. I love y'all.
I've never known someone on a show that hates it more than you do.
David Letterman.
So here's yes, there's a lot of parallels between you and Letterman.
No, there's none.
You guys have both spent some time at Ball State.
He's smart, yeah.
So this week's selection, Room 7609, is an a cappella version of Why Can't We Be Friends, chosen by Shawn.
You see it?
No. That was it.
He's not even
that's
paying
as far as I can
attention.
get.
He's not paying attention.
I am paying attention. I thought you were going to cue something up.
He's looking at his phone. Carlos is like, you actually left for this? Come on, what's going on?
No, Carlos is like, you don't like that show more than this one?
Wait, who's Carlos?
Your partner on the other podcast that you do.
Oh, yeah.
Are you losing it?
No, not really.
You really sold that well.
Shawn is in the same position that Dr. Canty is. He can't keep up the masquerade. Is he with the first young chick he said should be college material?
I can't get past the 250 grand in the early 80s, which is about, what, $1 million now.
No way. It's not $1 million now. 250 grand
with inflation.
Well, if you consider a house, the cost of a house back there is 40 grand. It's 200 grand now. It's similar. So.
How much was he charging those patients? I mean, can you imagine? He's like, well, I got to see my.
And was that money for gifts or a combination of gifts?
I got to see my smacked out hooker girlfriend, so we're going to have to do another half hour.
Well, it was a Parisian thing where he's got an apartment.
Yeah, he bought him a house. I think he bought a car, and I think he furnished the house, didn't he?
What kind of furnishings? And why didn't we talk about that with Lowell, by the way? Why did we have to?
Well, you were here the whole time.
You were monopolizing.
250,000 in 1985.
I kept waving over there. I wasn't starting a bullfight. I'm not the Queen of England. This wrist rotation is.
Even Marc was like shaking his head no. So when
according to the inflation calculator, 250,000 in 1985 is 692,000 today.
Okay, so
it's a significant sum.
It's almost 700 grand. Yeah, 700 grand.
It's almost $7
million.
609 grand.
700 grand.
How much would that have been 10,000 years ago?
Oh, guys, that could have been. That's a lot of.
It would have been a part of a goat.
Which part?
As I turn to the deity for release, all I get is the Lords of the New Church, who join us for Cover Week.
You walked all over it. It's 8 seconds. I'm going to give you a chance again. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
I wasn't ready.
The anus, of course.
Tim, thank you for suggesting Lords of the New Church with a cover of Hey Tonight.
Hey Tonight.